Hey, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. We are on day 14 of the series, and that means we're nearing the end of season 1. Congratulations if you made it this far. I hope that you are getting a lot out of this. Again, I know that the videos are not necessarily breaking down every detail of what the books have, but they are there to kind of guide you on your writer's journey, so that I hope you are taking the time to read these books and to get out of them what the writers intended you to get out of them. I once again just remind you, I'm deliberately not going through and giving the bullet points of everything it offers, because I think the best way to make use of the book is to read it. And but I think it's helpful for you to have a system in place where what should you read next, depending on where you are in the journey. And so we've also been kind of following along a theme this season about the writing structure, tackling the broad story. I know we didn't really cover a lot about scenes or dialogue or characters, anything like that. I will be doing that more probably next season. And again, I don't know when I'm going to start those. I got a few books that I have that I haven't actually read yet that I need to, that are more in line with that, the more specialized topics. So I don't really want to get into those topics until I've had a chance to read them myself. So that's also why I've been deliberately avoiding anything of that nature. But really the key in telling a good story is to have the story itself work, and that's kind of what the season's been about, is getting the skills necessary in order to tell the story the way that the reader is looking for. And I think when it comes to character and scenes and all of that, I mean, we can certainly learn from the stories we read and to see what works and what doesn't. I mean, I used an example of the Hunger Games earlier. I'm reading the new one, and I'm still only 7 chapters in that, but I've read the trilogy years ago, and I mean, it's evoked some really strong pictures based on what's going on in the character's life. There's never really a question on what's going on, even though it's strictly first person, where you have no idea what the outside characters are dealing with, other than what's referred to, and that's a strategy. They still do it well, and the point being is, if you've read enough fiction or even nonfiction, you can get a feel for what writers do in order to tell a story on the scene level or the character level. So one of the advice one piece of advice that Stephen King gives, and most writing instructors give, and a lot of writers will give, is if you plan to write, do a lot of reading. And the reason why that's important is because you have to kind of know your industry. You wouldn't build a car if you didn't know what a car looked like. You wouldn't drive a car if if no one taught you how to do that. I mean, you could try, but you'll probably get yourself killed. You don't want to do that. So one of the advantages of reading a lot is you get a feel for what the book should be, and that's important because when you're writing, even when you're learning how to write, again, we're on our 14th book today, and I mean, these books, they tell you how to do it, but there's no substitute for actually reading a book that somebody wrote. That's it's important. And actually, that's kind of going to be the premise of today's book. I'm not going to actually give you I was actually tempted to give you just a reading assignment for fiction, but I'm not going to do that. I do have a book you can learn from, but the way this book is designed, it takes a well-known novel and breaks it down so that you see exactly why the author made those choices. So today's book is an important one. It's another thick one. It's actually the book that refers to Robert McKee's story. It's where I learned about Robert McKee's story, is through this particular book that I've got here. I do want to emphasize, before I show you the book, that you can read most of it on a blog. It's actually, the book is based on a series of articles that the author wrote over the course of a year and a half. The difference is those blog posts are more unfiltered. This is like the edited, curated version of that book, or of the series of articles. And this one will come with the visuals. Plus, it's something you can hold in your hand. So I'm recommending the book, but you don't have to get the book, and even the author will tell you don't have to get the book. You can get all the information you need from his website. The website's name is the same as the book, so if you type in the the book name. You can also get the website name out of it. That book, if you're not already teased, based on the title of the video, is The Story Grid by Shawn Coyne. Okay, here's the back. That's Shawn Coyne right there. I think it's more important to know Shawn Coyne's background than it is the book that he wrote, because his background is the reason why the book exists. He used to be a New York editor. He used to work, I think for 25 years or so, he worked at a major publishing house as an editor for books you probably heard of and read. His current writing partner or business partner is Stephen Pressfield, who wrote this book called Gates of Fire, which is what 300 is based on, or the story that 300 is based on. I don't know that 300 is necessarily based on the Gates of Fire book, but they both tell the same story of Leonidas and the 300 holding back the Babylonians, or not, I'm sorry, the Persians. And then it talks about their battle, how they fought, their way of life, and just the fact that they're like, as singular people, they're just people, but as a team, they're impenetrable. They're dangerous, most dangerous army on earth. Really interesting thing. But this is, I believe that's the book that he edited. I know that he has edited that author's, many of his other books, but this is like his claim to fame. Is he's a New York editor who one day came to the realization that new editors, they just didn't know how to do the job, and his way of editing was likely to go out with him. Like when he retire, there'd be no one to pass along the lesson of how to edit well. And so he wrote these series of articles on his website trying to train people how to edit properly. And then when he had enough material, he curated this book. And so that's what the Story Grid is. It's his method for editing. And so what you see here, this image is like a graphic of the grid in action. And what it does is it follows structure, the structure we've been learning all, last few weeks. Inciting incident, crisis points, resolutions, all that. It's all in there. But he focuses on the scene levels, the positives and negatives. He focuses on something that he calls the fool's cap, where you can chart your entire story on one of those 14-inch pieces of paper, what they call the fool's cap paper. My dad used to have a legal pad that was basically the fool's cap they used to use for his business. I don't think you can find them anymore. I guess it's a product of the 70s and 80s. But it's essentially, a 14-inch piece of paper that you can, chart your entire story on that single sheet. And so that's like stage one. And then stage two is, breaking it down by scene. And he's got this 14-part method that he goes through in order to break down a scene. And if you look at the book, inside the book, it's kind of like a textbook. Yeah. And it's also priced like mine. I think it's a $35 book, if I recall. Which is, again, why you don't need to buy the book if you read the website. But what's good about the book is, again, it's edited. It's an editing book that's been edited. So, that's pretty sweet, right? Nice and meta. But, you've got, stuff like, the A and B story. You don't talk a lot about that yet. Not a lot of books do cover the A and B story, but this one does. And actually, I think Save the Cat covers it too, if I recall. But, it uses a lot of the same story models you're going to read all over. Like I just saw a reference to Geddes, who's, the protagonist of Chinatown. All the screenwriting books refer to Chinatown. I know McKee's story refers to Chinatown. When I took a screenwriting class back in college, they referenced Chinatown. If it's not Chinatown, it's Rocky or Star Wars. It can't be anything modern. It's always something from the 70s. But point being, there's a reason why these stories are constantly referred back to, is because they work. This book, like all the others, it uses these examples from these well-known stories to show you how they work, to show you why they work. And so you'll learn a lot from it. So anyway, this book is important because once you've written the story, you need to go back and you need to evaluate it. You need to make sure that it actually does the job that a story should do. And that means going through and looking through the 14 elements that define the story, including word count. Your average chapter should be about 1,500 words, according to Story Grid. It's not to say it has to be. but it's a good round number because it's something you can kind of predict. It should have, a turn, and basically, this is something that you'll see echoed in other books. A scene that doesn't change is not a scene. It's literally just a thing that happens. It doesn't have any weight on the character or the story. And if that's true, then the story has no meaning because you wasted your reader's time. So every scene has to go somewhere. And so part of what the story grid does is it helps you chart whether or not it's going somewhere. And it employs the use of spreadsheets. I mean, you could probably do this on Scrivener if you have a copy of that. It's all very hands-on. There's no software that I know of that does the story grid. But you can kind of make your own through a spreadsheet. But this is, in my opinion, the hardest book of all the ones I've recommended. This one's gonna be the hardest because this is the one you really have to sweat into. This is why I'm saving it for near the end of the season, because it's not an easy book to crack at all. It's the language is accessible. It's not like Robert McKee. It's not so highbrow that it's almost unreadable. It's very accessible from the language point of view, but the way it recommends you do editing, it's hard because you really have to not only read your work, but you have to evaluate it objectively. And if you can't do it, then you're going to want to get somebody who can understand the concept of story grid and apply it to your work. And that's where, if you're trying to get a job editing, this is a good system to use. The Story Grid website, they have a lot of people they've trained to do the work. So one of his missions was to train others to do editing the Story Grid way, and he's done that. And there's actually a class now that they'll certify people to become Story Grid level editors, and they're trained well to do it. And so it's the reason why I'm bringing this one up is because you need to edit your book. You can pay someone to edit your book when you're done, but it's going to cost you probably a couple $1,000s to do that, to be honest. Just a basic raw number. I don't have that kind of money at all, never have. Even when it's in my bank account, usually my job prevents me from holding on to it for very long because my job is not, lucrative at all. And so, a couple $1,000s, if it's in my bank account, that's precious. And a lot of writers are in that situation, especially those who make writing their priority. Those who write on the side who have an engineering degree as their main job probably don't need it as much. They're probably better off paying an editor. It certainly will free up their mind a little bit to focus on other things. But if you don't have the luxury of having a couple $1,000s, then you're going to want this book and learn how to do editing properly. Now, whether or not you commit to doing the work, again, that's on you. Everything we've covered this round has been about do the work if you want to succeed. Reading the book is not enough. I've read the book. I can't stop there. I have to do the work now. And so it's going to be the same thing here with Story Grid. And I say it's the hardest book, not because it's the hardest to read, it's because it's the hardest to put to practice. So it's going to be investment. If you get this one, it's, again, $35. It's not cheap. You can get an ebook, I believe, but I'm not sure. I know you can definitely read the articles on the website, and of course, the website goes beyond the book because you have podcasts, you have other editors have gotten involved, and they break down other stories. This particular book breaks down The Silence of the Lambs. If you've read the book or seen the movie, one of the things that this book emphasizes is that you can do either. You can either read the book or watch the movie because the movie is basically shot for shot the book, and so you can get as much out of watching the movies as you can the book. I've actually done both. I've read and watched. It's a fantastic book. It's dark as crap, but it's for thrillers, as far as thrillers go. And that was Shawn Coyne's specialty was editing thrillers, so that's why he focused on the Story Grid. But he's got a companion book called Story Grid for Pride and Prejudice. So if you're looking for classic books, you can see how the Story Grid applies even to that book. And then the podcast, they break down The Martian, they break down I think Bird Box is on there, a few others, so you can always go back and look and see what they cover. It's an extensive library. You'll probably need more than a week. I think I spent probably a good year on that site studying it, but it's one you want on your list of things to keep in your toolbox. and on your shelf. So that's Story Grid. I would say if you get the Story Grid, get the Silence of the Lambs with it, so you can kind of follow along. And then I read the Red Dragon first just to know the characters. So if you want to do that, again, these are dark books. If you're squeamish, then don't do it. But if you like thrillers, even if you don't mind a little bit of grit, check them out. And so read it along with the Story Grid book, and I think you'll get more out of it. But it's important. This one, I think, is, of all the books you cover, this one's one of the most important for the end results. So definitely recommend that. So I know I've been a little kind of scattered on which books have come next. I do know my last two for the season. The next one's gonna be a fun one. It's not gonna only be a book I recommend. It's gonna be one that you're gonna want to read. Like, and I don't mean like want to read because it's helpful. I mean it's hilarious. It's a book. Even if you're not a writer, even if your trade is like in marketing, you don't care a lick about storytelling, it's still a funny book. So you're gonna want this one regardless of what your goals are. So come back for that one. As always, like the video if you liked it. Thumbs down if you don't, and you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you thumbs down. Just try not to get past 80%. If you see 20 likes, I can deal with 5 unlikes. It's fine. No, I'm kidding. Do what you want. But yeah, like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you like more content like this. Leave comments in the comments below if you have comments to give. As always, if you have something you want to share with other readers and you think that it'll help you, go ahead and post a link to your blog. Link us to a chapter of something you're working on. Maybe somebody out there will be nice enough to give you a feedback on it. I hope that people will do that. I hope that you make good use of that for the purpose. But yeah, just come on back next Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, or whenever you get off work. And just, again, all the things that the YouTubers tell you to do, go ahead and do here. Just, make sure you keep your pants on. Not that I would ever know, but this webcam, I mean, I don't know what it's capable of. So, just saying it, keep your pants on. All right, see you next week. Same time, same channel, same reason. Same shirt. No more coffee. It's in the sink now. If you've been keeping up with the saga of the coffee cup. All right, until next time.